check this out. So I was I mean I don't touch my computer. My stuff's sitting on my desk the whole time, and I don't mess with it. Actually, I was just on it last night. I interviewed Cynthia Sue Larson, who's in the physics and Mandela effect and things like that. I'm going to show you exactly what happened when I pulled this up. Let's see.
Anyone know? I'm a
I was watching
well-respected
that,
doctor, but this just happened.
and this just happened right now.
Can you give us some examples of you don't have to
Saying
give
my
me
mic wasn't
examples. I
connected,
don't want to put you on the spot.
my
But can you
camera's
give
not
us some
connected,
examples
and
of
it's all one piece.
that are
Well,
physical
my mic's separate,
manifestations
but
of
so I said, "What the
things?
hell is this, man?" Like
Yeah, lots of things.
I'm trying to log in there, and
Found a way.
the stream is just telling me it's not ready. It won't let me do it. So then I jumped out and jumped back in.
Some things like that happen.
I didn't touch nothing, and the microphone's not working. Everything's fine. So you said you had microphone issues. I mean, so did I, and we're not connected.
Yeah, well, this actually is something that happened a few days ago. I moved something, and I haven't got a chance to figure it out. But I've had other issues though. I mean, I've had the whole top third of the screen turn into like these little white orbs, or like actually little spears, or spheres. It sort of looked like fish roe, because in between it was like a pink liquid, and then the lower 2/3 of the screen, I locked up and was doing a serpent dance. I was oscillating like this, and it kept happening. It happened the first time it happened. I was on a chat with a MyLab woman from YouTube. It happened there first, and she saw it, and I was actually on another screen. I was searching out something to share with her, and she goes, "Are you doing that?" And I'm like, no, I think I just clicked out of the screen. That's all it is. And when I came back, it happened again. And I was quite astonished. And then it happened multiple times, like several times, with several other people. And then I finally went on this one channel. It was the Experiencer channel. And the guy got so freaked out from it because it happened like 3 or 4 times. And I told him about it beforehand. And then it happened. And then we started recording. It happened 2 more times during the recording, and then 1 time after we stopped. So 5 hours later, he sent me an email, and he says, "I don't feel safe putting this on YouTube."
Why? I mean, what was his concern as far as putting on YouTube? He thinks somebody's going to see it and come after him. What's the take on that?
Well, I talked about a lot of controversial stuff.
Check 1, check 2.
I really like the terminology used for planetary consciousness simulation. I think that's a really good way to describe it. Can you describe that for me in your own words of what you feel like this is, what we're living in, what reality is?
All right. I also refer to it as a transdimensional AI planetary consciousness simulation. It's just, I'm hamming it up with everything I can put in there, so it's one term. But what it is that it's a type of an augmented reality or an overlay. You can describe it any way you want, because none of us really fully understand it.
Yep.
But what it's doing is it's producing. Let's see, one facet I understand about it. It's producing something that I would describe as psychic white noise, which shuts out the psychic signal. So when you remote view, for example, and how that's done is I would assign you a target, but I wouldn't let you know what the target is. I might give you like coordinates, latitude and longitude. I may give you just a letter or a number, or I may just tell you there's a target. And what you're doing is you're increasing your sensitivity to the weak psychic signal, which is being completely drowned out by the simulation itself, or almost completely. So you're sensitizing yourself to that, and you're using certain protocols to prevent your imagination from creating something. I think it's called psychic overlay or psychic front loading. I think it's psychic front loading. That's when your imagination kind of fills in the blanks instead of just opening yourself up to the weak psychic signal. So it works in that way. It actually drowns it out. It separates us from the source consciousness and from each other. So it limits us to 5 senses. How I understood this is being done is that there's a signal generator inside the planet Saturn, which produces a frequency. And then the rings of Saturn act like a reflector dish. And if you look at the orientation of the North Pole, it has it's actually right in the center of the actual rings, and you have a 6-sided hexagonal storm that's perfectly concentric. That's at the North Pole, which is basically a side effect of a frequency, or actually a sound frequency that's emanating from the technology itself. So it's making that anomaly. You also have like a drone fleet that engineers the rings. They comb the rings and they produce the rings. This is why they're perfectly concentric. You can see these in the Ring Makers of Saturn book, which was a guy, I forget what particular job he had at NASA, but I think he got these from the Cassini mission. He analyzed them, and then he wrote the book after he retired, and it was called The Ring Makers of Saturn. And you can actually see these large vehicles, or these spacecraft. They're actually emitting some of the material that's in the rings itself, which is a crystalline material combined with rock and ice. So these things constantly comb the rings, and then that creates like a satellite dish, and that sends the signal out throughout the entire solar system. And then that's augmented by other technology, as well as etheric implants. So that way they can selectively implant you and give you specific selected psychic abilities and have full control over it. I was thinking earlier when I was in the shower about how I would explain this, because I knew this would probably be one of the first things that you'd ask. And how I know this is because throughout my life, besides for the ET contact that I had, which was basically, connected to the government in IBIS, is that throughout my life, they would turn on psychic abilities and then switch them back off. And I knew that somebody had control. And when I looked and I did research about other people, I could see the same thing happening there too, because psychic abilities, well, the skeptics will always say that psychic abilities have not been proven in a lab. There has been some research. There is some declassified stuff from the CIA. There's a publication out there. I think it's called A Magician Walks into a Lab, or A Magician Visits a Lab, something like that. You can look that phrase up, and it's a CIA. It's on the CIA website, and it's actually a report about somebody who had psychic abilities that they could validate. So what you see is you have a pattern of the government kind of seizing on the real psychics, taking control of them, and also covering up the evidence. Meanwhile, you have a lot of people that have psychic abilities, but they're very, very low level, and they don't have full control over it. So it's hard for them to replicate it under a scientific condition. Plus, you have frauds. You have a lot of those as well. So once you weed them out, you're left with people with low-level psychic abilities. And a lot of them will tell you that, they have these experiences, but they don't have control over them. And that's because it's being remotely controlled externally. So it isn't something that isn't an issue with the person. It's all being modulated by etheric implants. So if you create white noise and then you put something in someone that can limit the effect of it in a selective way, then you get selective psychic abilities that they can control remotely. So that's what I determined. Later, of course, I had these experiences, and it was just a gradual learning process that this is how they were doing it, because I got involved in an Enki cult, and for about 7 months. And what I found out was, through my own personal experiences and with others, is that the ETs could turn on psychic abilities to a significant level and then turn them back off. They did it with me as well in the cult, but also with others. And I watched people, they would go from 0 to almost 100 and would have some substantial abilities. But when it came to actually using them on their own, and not within a controlled, set of conditions, they didn't have really control over it. So I saw the control factor again. That's when I realized that the ones who were in control of this were the extraterrestrials themselves. So the consciousness simulation is their way of controlling us. It's basically the way of creating a prison system and then putting us in it with amnesia. And there's several reasons for the amnesia. So I would say that's the start to the answer of your question.
Yeah. So you believe this is a physical matter reality that's been overlaid um, by frequency or by some kind of technology. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, but as far as physical reality, the physical reality itself is more of an illusion. It's just
Mhm.
energy, it's consciousness. Without our ability to perceive it, it's not going to be here. So I think it's kind of the inverse of how a lot of people see it, because they see it from the physical perspective and they're looking for this etheric realm, when in fact all of it is really the same. It's just varying levels of experience. Um, I know outside the simulation, reality is much more fluid. So I guess the best way to describe this is that for those of you who believe there's an afterlife and a heaven, you normally, most people look at it as something that's more fluid and more, affected through our consciousness. So if we want to manifest something, it'll appear to us. And that's like the whole heaven concept, is you don't have to work for it. Where here you have to build something or make it, unless you have technology that can do the same thing. And we hear about these technologies from whistleblowers, but we don't have them in our society. So anyway, what I'm saying is that our concept of heaven is basically the concept of reality outside the simulation. So we're in a situation where, and as far as physics go and the law of physics, I think they're probably, I think we just don't understand all of it. And I'm not sure, and I'm almost ready to say it probably doesn't, that the augmented reality doesn't affect the scientific laws as we know them. It's just that it limits our perception of them. The other thing that it does too is that it limits our ability to connect with each other and the collective, which would allow us to access massive amounts of information through something that I would describe as a psychic internet. A lot of people call it the Akashic records or whatever you want to call it, but what you're accessing is the mind of the creator, and therefore you can get all of this. And what the ETs do is they have technology that interfaces just like a soul would to the collective, and it can extract information such as scientific information in order to build something. So I know there's technology that interfaces with that. So in other words, if you're living on another planet and you previously lived here, and you wanted a Floby haircutting system, for example, or some novel item that you had when you were living here, it could be reproduced there. Molecule by molecule, it would be assembled. And it would basically, materialize. And that's how they do a lot of their manufacturing and recycling. They eliminate, the waste products out of existence. It just goes back into the ether. So
Gotcha. So would your interpretation of what's going on be a benevolent creator that's been hijacked into the simulation? And did the creator, in your opinion, did the creator create the simulation and it was hijacked, or did they create physical matter and we're being manipulated through that from some kind of a frequency overlay? Like, what is your opinion of
I
that?
don't have all of that information. I can tell you that the way I understand this is that there is a creator and that we're inside basically an augmented reality. And so we don't have an accurate perception of who the creator is. Some of us do and most of us don't. And it's a situation where outside of the simulation, it's the normal universe. But what I was told was, and this is from accessing my higher self, is that 24% of this universe, and there's many, are locked in a quantum, it's like a quarantine. And they're under a planetary consciousness simulation. And this is what the negative ETs do for soul harvesting and for enslavement of souls. It kind of goes back to the religious concept of selling your soul to Satan, in a sense.
Mhm.
It's been sewn into the religions. So to try to answer your question, which is a complicated one, um, we're in an augmented reality, we're in an artificial state, and outside of this, everything is completely different. It's the best way I can describe it. Inside of it, we're basically in an augmented reality where we're being controlled by negative extraterrestrials. They're controlling our afterlife, they're controlling our reality, they're basically programming things, and it's starting to break down. When you talk about the Mandela effect, I think I didn't really believe in that until recently. And what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing it's like a glitch in this system. So things are starting to break down. So the overlay or the veil is starting to thin.
Hmm.
If that answers your question. I think I left a little bit out. If you want to redefine your question and then narrow it down a little bit, because I think I forgot some things that you asked me.
That's all right. Just that do you believe that the creator is a benevolent one? I think I know the answer to that. I've seen some of your talks before, and you say that you believe the creator is benevolent, but we'll call them archons or whatever you want to call the artificial overlay. Has kind of hijacked that and changed some people's perspectives of what's going on, their reality, how they interact with it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the creator, and I'm going to give you an example from my own experiences. When I was connected to the system and I had a lot of silver cords on me, I was connected to an altar at the White Sands installation.
Sorry, were they you said physical cords, or this is like a tether? Higher tether.
It's the same kind of cord that you would see in a near-death experiences, or,
Okay, gotcha.
say an OBE. A lot of people report a silver cord. Well, this was hundreds of them, and they were small ones, but I had one large one in between my shoulders coming out of my back. That was the life force cord. I had a large one that was affecting my heart because they attached that. But I was literally connected to a series of altars. These were clones, and they were soul fragments of me. And it got down to where there was one at the White Sands facility, which is in New Mexico. It's at the missile test range, but it's underneath the mountain range itself, not where they actually have explosions. And they were using that to control me, modify my personality, and also make me physically sick and affect me physically. And there's other ways to do it remotely as well. So it was kind of a combination of those. But they do that to a lot of people. And hold on a sec. I'm a little bit fuzzy this morning. Can you repeat the question?
Yep. The benevolent creator.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
All right. So once I separated the cord, actually, let me go back. There was a period of time I had some people helping me, and a really good friend of mine who has these source experiences, experiences with the creator and so forth. She kept telling me all these things, and I was in a completely different belief system at that point. I thought that the ETs were it. There was no God except maybe a force of nature, like the New Agers talk about, a source consciousness, but not one that has its own personality or its own will. And then I thought that it went from that to kind of like a plurality where it's just like we're God pretty much, collectively, and that's it. So it's just us interacting with each other. That's generating the reality, so that's God, all of us collectively. And that's more or less the New Age concept of things. So the ET's stage of deception, where I started having these source consciousness experiences, and my friend was really surprised because it happened so quickly. And I literally went from, one day not believing it to the next day being all love and light and having these experiences. The problem was they were counterfeit. And when I had them, she had described it to me as a very loving experience, but I didn't have that. I had kind of like, it was like a sadness combined with something else that I really couldn't put my finger on. So that was kind of the recipe of the energy signature. And then I was having similar experiences. Like if I did something right, or if I said something right, I would get these waves of emotion. And it was supposed to be the source consciousness. And that's what I was being told telepathically through this military ET program. So after I separated myself from the cords, almost immediately I began having a completely different experience. This one was profound and transformative and healing. It wasn't like the other experiences where you're just feeling something and maybe you get a little bit emotional, or you just like, you get like a lump in your throat and you feel like you've done something right because you said something and you felt this energy. That was the counterfeit source. What I was feeling now was something that was transformative, and it was actually communicating with me when I really needed it. And it doesn't make a habit of it. So more or less, I got what I needed, and it was kind of like, okay, you're free to go and you have to do what you have to do. But yeah, these were very, very transformative experiences. And every time that I had them, I would break down and cry, where before I didn't. And it's consistent every time that I have them. And it's kind of the similar things, but here's an example of one experience that I had. I was on my way to the hardware store. I didn't have something that I needed, so I had to go to a larger one. that was like 15 minutes away. And I was riding down the road. It was after dark at this point. I think it was around 8 o'clock. And I started thinking about all of my experiences, where my life was going, how long I was going to be here. Was I really going to be going home soon? Was, just kind of questioning everything. And that's something that you do when you have these experiences, especially the more off the hook, profound ones, because it's so far removed from reality when everybody else is experiencing that you question it as, okay, and is it a deception? Is it a delusion? You go through all these things, and there's a lot of self-analysis going on. So I'm going down the road, and instantly I feel this powerful energy, and it's a love energy. It's totally different from what I felt before, because what I felt before was a combination of sadness with something else mixed in that kind of changed it a bit. So it was as if it was trying to capture the essence of that energy, but could not produce the love aspect of it or anything transformative. And I could see at that point, when I had those two and I had the contrast and I experienced it, I realized that a lot of people in the new age, when they become influencers, they start talking about these source experiences, but then you see them start to do things that are unethical. They get caught in lies. They say things, and if they're told something incorrect by their ETs, instead of going back and confronting things and saying I was lied to or I was deceived, misled somehow, they just remove the video and they go on with it and they just follow a new script. So I could see that pattern, and I could see how if you're connecting with something that's supposed to be God but isn't, how it would be very easy for it to corrupt you and to lead you in that direction, or for you to lead yourself in that direction but have nothing transformative to lead you back to the right path. So that's what I was experiencing. It was very transformative. And actually, I was told that my time here is coming to an end. My suffering, will eventually be over, and I'm going home where I can heal. That was the message. And I wept for like 15 minutes until I got to the store, and then I had to get myself together to go inside. And when I got back out, I thought about it again, and I started crying a little bit again on the way home. But it had a profound impact on me. That's how I know the creator is, benevolent, and and what people are actually getting in this world is something else, for the most part, because you either have to base it all on faith. Like if you're in a religion, you're going to look at this, and if you're not having any of these psychic experiences like I've just described, then you got to go on faith. So the love you feel comes from the fellowship of the congregation, and then, the sense of community. And then you have faith that there's a God there actually making all this happen. And then some people, may have an experience, they may not. But, for the most part, a lot of this, especially when you get into the new age, it's a lot of this AI stuff. Because this is from what I found out, is that, and this is from a past life memory, as well as a lot of other experiences, a lot of research. And ultimately, what happened in the end, after I separated from the cords, it all kind of came out, is that the New Age movement, going back to, what's the guy's name? There's a
Eckhart Tolle.
No. His name is Van Tassel. I can't think of his first name. But anyway, Van Tassel started channeling the Ashtar Command and actually created a cult. And there's this really big rock. He purchased a piece of land. I think it's in the state of Nevada. And they made the Integratron, which is a circular structure. It's a building. It's supposed to have transformative health effects and stuff like that. And they built a ceremonial room to channel the Ashtar Command underneath this gigantic rock that was just sitting on the ground. It was like a size of a small house. And it's actually a place you can visit. There was also an airstrip built. And that was the beginning of the New Age, the whole New Age deception. And that was engineered by the U.S. military, other militaries that were working these deals out with mainly reptilians, but ultimately a whole group of negative ETs. It isn't just the reptilians. It's every extraterrestrial group that people are experiencing and seeing. And these are more or less soul groups because they can change their container body to meet the conditions of the planet or to facilitate whatever work they're doing. So they're not limited to a specific species. So a reptilian can become a human ET, a human looking ET, or anything for that matter. As long as the soul is compatible with the container body for the purpose, it really doesn't matter which species they are. They're all really working together. You have the ones that run the operation, then you have the assisting races that are there to get something out of it.
So why do you think that? Okay, so I'm going to try to break this down and ask some questions based on what you said. You said quite a lot actually, but if the creator is benevolent and it's been kind of hijacked, for lack of a better term, by AI or extraterrestrial races or whatever that is, why do you think that the new age deception would be to empower us, tell us that we're gods, tell us that we're consciousness, tell us? I mean, it seems to me that if that was truly a deception, it'd be making us play the victim and not the creators.
Well, every good deception has a lot of truth in it. That's always been what we've seen with intelligence agencies. It's what our government actually gives us. It gives us maybe 75% truth and 25% lies.
Right, but what would be the play? What would be the deception play on empowering people to change their lives and take responsibility for what they want to manifest? I guess, for lack of a better term, manifestation. What's the play, and how would they redirect that into making that a deception?
Okay, well, we do have control to a certain degree. So what they're essentially, now the whole reason for the New Age deception, I have to kind of go back to the beginning and explain what it's about. There are souls coming here from elsewhere. Okay, these are what you would call the star seeds. Most of them, I would say probably most of them aren't awake, and they're not going to be awakened. But there's a certain portion of them that are here to do something, whether it be to be an influencer or to carry out a life mission. And we see that a lot. People are waking up. That's an act of God. That's why people in the SSP are waking up and remembering things. That's why people have been super soldiers, because there's a variety of people who have been in the secret space program. They may be super soldiers. They may be just like a janitor. It could be a sex worker, whatever it happens to be. There's something. So these people are waking up. They needed to engineer a false light or a false awakening, so that as we wake up, they can plug us into a false reality. That's the false awakening. And then they can control it, because what they're worried about is they're worried about not just the social influence over time, but they're worried about actual sleeper cells that are here to do psychic warfare. So this is the reason why they abduct people when they're young, and they put them into these programs. So these long-term abduction programs, any abduction that happens involves either the U.S. military or whatever military in whatever country you're in that's under an agreement with these extraterrestrials. So they allow their citizens to be abducted. And they do this, and this is directly from a super soldier that I was interrogated by at the time, just before I separated myself and I destroyed the cords. And I asked him, I said, "Why did you do this to me?" And he says, "To preserve the continuity of the government." And what they're doing is they want to hold on to their authority. And this isn't the U.S. government. We're talking about a globalist world government, a new world order, which is behind all of this. And they're the ones who are trying to create this world government, which they've been very good at so far, and to maintain control, to prevent it from being stopped. And that's what the plan is of, the positive side here. So they had to create this and engineer this. As far as these deceptions go about, you have to give somebody something. So if you're going to engineer a belief system, such as a New Age, you have to give people something they can, really grab a hold of. If you tell them that they can change their reality just by wishing things, just by wanting it, then you can manipulate them by creating a state of apathy, to where instead of actually getting up and doing something, they're relying on something else. They're just relying on their own intent in a collective way to change reality. There's people out there who literally think that they're in 5D right now because they've taken a course and they've believed and they've done everything that the guru told them to do, and they literally put themselves in a false reality. It's called denial. So if they can get you to basically lay down your arms and give up and just believe that things are going to change, that believe that you're in a different reality from everybody else, like you can take a specific medical product that's untested and very could possibly harm you. Some of these people actually believe that they can transmutate that harmful effect simply by their belief system. So what this does is it creates a weakness and it takes away your power. And then there's a lot of the aspects of the new age are like this, where you're giving up energy to something, like you have a mass consciousness type of exercise. Well, where does this energy go? All of these things are really designed to harvest energy. That's another aspect of this. But, the goal is essentially, ultimately, just a moment.
Yep.
The real goal of this is to separate you from to separate you from the real creator that's in control of this. And the nature of the creator and why these things are allowed to happen is because you need a yin and a yang. You need a positive and a negative to create an action. So if you had a reality that was all positive, you would not have that action potential. You have to have something there, the opposing force. So this is the nature of essentially thought. So you have a creative mind that is imagining all of this like a dream, and therefore it all exists. So it's like if you think of yourself in a void and it's just you and you're the creator, you've got nothing to experience but just a void. So what are you going to do? You're going to start imagining things. You're going to start dreaming things up. You're going to start inventing things, and they're going to increase in complexity. And as you do that, you create things, and eventually you get to a point where you've created all of these things because it's all thought, it's all energy. Therefore, it is, and it's as real as you want it to be. You've now created everything, and then you sit back and you act like a referee. But you need all of these things to take place. You need the positive and the negative. So unfortunately, the creator has to create the negative side to harm us, and then it has to create the positive side to push back on it. And I don't know, you kind of see this whole positive and negative thing. If you study nature and you look at the world around you from like a fresh perspective, without the pollution of everything that's already preconceived, you'll see these things. You'll see this pattern. It's a positive and a negative, and it's a push and a pull, and that's what creates action. So in order to have a continuation of thought or a timeline, which there's many of them, in order to have this continuation of a series of events that make the timeline up, you need to have that positive and negative. So unfortunately, evil is here to stay, and so it's good, but it's just the way it is. And really, if you think about it, you really don't know what good is until you've had it bad.
Well, I agree. I think a lot of us I think everyone who's lived on Earth for any specific amount of time has dealt with suffering, and the nature of suffering either causes you to keep going down that rabbit hole of suffering and being a victim and not overcoming that and tying emotion to that and having that harm you your whole life. But the other part of that is, and I can attest to this myself, from my journey, is that the essence of free will has kind of asked me to make a decision. Do I want to continue down that road of suffering and being a victim and traveling down that journey? And for me, I can embrace either one of those. I can embrace the fact that, free will let me go down this way and see that there are forces in this reality and in this world that are expressing themselves, for lack of a better term. But I also see the positive parts of this that say that is my choice. And I believe in the field of information and your aura and the things like that. And I absolutely believe that if you believe that you can shut it off, call it ignorance, call it whatever you want, that will not actually interfere with your information field. And I've seen that firsthand, from the things that I've seen. And I refuse to let myself go down a rabbit hole, where it will turn my intentions into seeing the things that I believe. And I think that the New Age will show you that. The New Age religions and the New Age concept of you being God and part of God and split off will let you attach to that. I felt that whatever that might be, that Kundalini awakening, that flood of gamma, and it changed my life for sure. And there are days where I'm down, where my energy level isn't that way. But if I allow myself, this is just my opinion, my thought, if I allow myself to go down to explore the options of, if I'm having a bad day, who's doing that to me, or who's making that happen to me, or if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'm like, that's somebody messing with me. But I choose the other direction, and I have to make that conscious choice, because I want to see what I'm believing. I want to see those positive things that happen, and whether it's monetarily, whether it's situations that happen, whether things that that I can observe and see. I absolutely feel that if I believe the things are going to happen for the right reasons, or even if it's falsely representing that, then I am much more able to see the better part of what we're doing here. The I don't know if it's the school part, the evolving part, the ascending part, whatever that might be. But I think that there's a lot of truth to both of what I'm speaking and what you're speaking as well. And I think that you have to make a choice. And I'm not saying that you have to make it and lie to yourself, or go down a way that you don't see it properly. But when you get to the end of the road and you say, I've had enough, I want to create my own reality. I want to create my own things. I've seen things physically manifest in my life. I've seen things come to me that's expensive things that I didn't send to myself, or nobody sent them to me. But I've seen so many examples of synchronicities that are positive, and they're beautiful things that, to me, the AI can't touch me, or the archons can't touch me. And I refuse to believe that's going to happen to me. Now, maybe I might change my mind, later when I start seeing things, if I do, but I don't want to see those things. And, so I think I wanted to talk to you based on your experience about how things have happened to you. And I think people are looking for hope, and they're looking for positive signs of reframing it. And then what happens after you reframe it? Does it suck you back in? Quite possibly. But the aspect of free will and your information field, I think there's something to that as well. Just, that's just me talking to you, trying to be honest with how I see things.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right about that. Your free will exists, but yeah, basically, if you want to look at it this way, think of the creator as like a conscious medium, or like a canvas, and every one of us is a painted face on it. Okay, so we all have a piece in this, and we do have free will to a certain extent. But when you pull back out and you look at it, it's essentially one mind manifesting itself as everyone at the same time, and itself. So it's all of this. So you have to think in a completely different way to kind of conceptualize this accurately. Everything you said, I agree with. That's the thing. I don't want to give people the perception that because if you look at different religions, let's take the Christian religion, for example, a lot of what they teach you, it takes your power away to change things.
And that's why they took out the Gospel of Thomas, because of that reason. They didn't want you to feel empowered. They didn't want you to feel like God was within. If you're not looking externally towards the church, hey, take that out, make that, that's the Apocrypha, that's not included in the canon. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was going to get to is that, these organized religions and the religions themselves, because if you get down to it, you'll realize that, and there's ways to look at this. The best way that I could say for just anybody want to take a look at something about how these religions are created, if you want to believe in remote viewing, which I do, because it's been basically, there's enough evidence to prove it. I know how it works. So, and I've experienced it myself a little bit. But for those who don't, I would recommend actually doing some hardcore research, looking what the CIA has declassified. And I would go to the Farsight Institute, and I'd look at other remote, viewing information out there. But the Farsight Institute has remote viewed several different events that are in Scripture, and has found that they were actual events that were staged by extraterrestrials to create a religious belief system. And, and also to engineer the civilization, to change the outcome of things, to steer human society, not necessarily for the better. And they all require worship, obedience to a jealous God that basically exemplifies the extraterrestrial presence. So they're playing God with us. So they want you to be like a servant to this God and continuously be in worship and in fear of it. So the new age gives you a different perspective on it, which is that's what pulls you in because it feels better. It feels like it's more realistic. It's more real. The problem is that it's just another way of sucking you into something else, but giving you more truth, but actually deceiving you at the same time. And when you tell somebody that all you need to do is believe in something, then you create basically a state where you won't do anything. You'll just believe and hope that it's going to happen. And it can get to a point where you can completely lose touch with reality and with each other. Another thing that I also, people who think that there's fake people out there, and now I've heard of this, I've not experienced it myself. I do know they can generate someone that looks real, or you can have an experience that feels absolutely real, but it was artificially generated. So therefore, there could be people out there that aren't real. The problem is when you look at everybody as a whole and you start to try to pick these people out, you'll eventually become indifferent to them, and you'll see somebody on the street that needs help and you won't help them because you don't think they're real. And it'll detach you from things. It's just an example I was given. It's just one of the aspects of the ET contactee deception that I really don't like, is because I've seen people listen to people talk about this, and whether they're explaining it properly or not, they don't stress this, is that you cannot look at everybody as being an AI generated entity. You need to look at them as a person first, and then you need to reach out and you need to connect with each other. But overall, what you're saying is right. We can create our own reality. The problem is that we don't have full control over it. That's where the ET presence comes in. If we have full control over our reality and we weren't in this augmented reality that they created, all of these things that you say that you've just described would be profound and powerful. We would be in total control of our overall of our lives and our collective, our collective trajectory. Yeah, I mean, we could set the course for ourselves.
I think we actually do have full control over it. I just don't think that we know how to do it. And the problem that I see is that, when you empower someone who's not aware of how to do it, or they're doing it for the wrong reasons, or they're just misguided, that's going to cause a lot of issues, right? You're going to tell somebody, oh, you believe in God, you feel this, you get the flood of love, and then all of a sudden the next day they wake up and they go, I don't feel the same. And they're like, oh, you've been suckered in, you got suckered. And it's, you're not teaching someone to fish is the problem. So you're also not teaching them how step by step they can create a new reality for themselves. And if this is a simulation, whether it's not a primary world or whether this is just an overlay, that there's nothing else beyond this. If you believe that there is a benevolent creator in all of this, then you have to be indifferent to the fact that we have our own experiences, right? I mean, there's the Mandela effect is proving one thing. It's proving that everyone has their own perspective of their own reality, and they can stay in their own reality, and they cannot be manipulated by it if they know how to do it. So while I 100% agree that, there are certain things that will teach you the right steps, I firmly believe, and until I have the experience otherwise, I still believe that I can fully control it, and that other people can too. And I don't know if that's, I'm not going to say it's my mission or that's my purpose, but, I do feel empathy for people who are, homeless and things like that. But I also believe that there are people that have been manipulated, either hybridized or, some kind of genetic manipulation, or their consciousness level has just gone from a bandwidth of this to this. It's so small that they can't even reach out and create their own reality. And those people have to want help too. They have to want to be able to change their life. And, you can have empathy for someone, but also let them learn their lessons in their own time. And that's the way that I look at it. I am one of those people who probably 6-7 months ago was preaching that there's NPCs all over the place, and, that person doesn't have a soul. I've since kind of backed up a little bit and said, it's possible that it's a bandwidth thing. But when you talk to some people in the last few years, and you you watch them, they don't have anything that makes them human in their consciousness, right? Their consciousness is so small to some people that you have to wonder what's going on in there. And I know they've probably been reprogrammed and repurposed, and they've been shoved down this area where they can't make their own decisions. But that's what I'm trying to talk to people about. And what I believe in the most is that, by empowering you to make your own decisions and believing something that you will see, I can't make you believe it is the problem. So if you say I believe but you don't believe it, I mean, that's a lesson you need to learn in your own time, in my opinion. I can have empathy for you, but in the end, it is an ascending or a learning of a power. And
you have to want to help yourself, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, and that, again, that goes back to me. That goes back to free will. That is if I want to explore suffering, if I want to explore not making a decision, if I want to explore being lazy, or if I want to explore whatever I want to explore, you have to take a step. In an augmented reality and in a video game, and these things that go on, that's in the simulational reality that we're in, you have to take a step. But everything is action, right? So if you sit here and don't do anything, it's still an action. You just haven't taken the steps to fulfill what you want to happen.
Right.
So that's the way that I see it. I have, things that have happened to me lately, especially, that make no sense. And I'm with you as far as something else is going on around us. As far as things happening that you have no way of connecting those dots of how that happened, how the cause and how the effect are connected, you don't even know. But that's kind of the mystery of life and of hope. I personally believe that we can fly. I believe anything is possible, but we don't know how to connect those dots of that. And so as I go through the journey that I'm on, I have to continually reframe my existence and my purpose and my journey, because that's, in the end, all we will feel is our emotions. That's basically what I'm trying to say, is all we can control is our emotions. And if I let someone dictate how I should feel based on fear, or based on a situation that I perceive it incorrectly, or from my perception, if I let that happen, then my free will is gone. My sovereignty of my informed field is gone, and I've lost. And the people who are trying to steer us in a certain direction of fear and one world government, whatever that might be, they're going to win, because then you're not controlling how you feel.
Right. The way they control us is by limiting our perception. And the ETs do that. I'm going to give you like a top-down type of scenario. We have no long-term history of self. So, collectively, our history has been erased through a cataclysm that's been cyclic.
Or multiple cataclysms.
Yeah. So that shows you right there that we're not totally in control, and there's no level of wishing or wanting for it to stop is going to happen. It's actually going to reverse that. Something actually has to happen from externally. We're not in the position to do anything here on the planet underneath of this augmented reality to stop it completely. We can change what we do in our own lives. We can change ourselves. So when people ask me, what can I do to try to change this thing? What can I do to turn it around? You have to change yourself, just like you're talking about.
Daily. Yep. So daily, by minutes, by the way that you think. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And if you have interactions with people throughout the day, evaluate how you did. Go through it in your mind after it happens. If you talk to your boss, or you are the boss, and you talk to your, to your who's ever under you that you have to manage, you have to look at yourself and say, did I do that at the optimal way? Was I compassionate? You have to look, and whether or not, you have to ask yourself, did I do the right thing in every set of circumstances? So you have to police yourself. And that is about, changing yourself first. And then you change how you behave and how you react and what you feel. And then you can influence reality. Then, collectively, we can create a better reality for ourselves.
Absolutely. We can. Yep. I agree. And I think
that it's much harder. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that I agree 100%. And that if you approach every situation, again, reframing it, this is for yourself. I'm not trying to preach to somebody to do this for themselves and not feel a certain way. But if you reframe everything that you you do, and it's not easy. I'm a type A. I was always a type A. But if you can reframe it to either, do the right thing by the way your standards are, or you learn from it, there's no wrong answer to that. And I think a lot of these things keep repeating in our lives that are testing us for ourselves. They're tests for ourselves, that I want to learn and be a better person and be a better human and have more empathy. But if you approach that as if you would do it correctly, or you're going to learn from it and embrace that when those things happen to you, embrace that, then I think there's no wrong answer to that. And collectively, if we can do that, like you're saying, if we can do that, we make this a better place.
Right. And we can make it to a certain degree a better place. So you have the psychic cataclysm activity going on. So that actually reboots us and gives us collective amnesia, so that we can't really learn from our mistakes in a long-term way. The other problem with that is that we don't have access to the collective consciousness. So we can't. So normally in a normal state of affairs without the simulation, you would be able to access, you'd be able to look through time. You could look into the future and see different, outcomes of things, but you could also go into the past and access everything and actually live through somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
You tap into somebody's consciousness. They do it in remote viewing all the time, but that's a very weak way to do it. If, I have a memory of actually being in a situation where I could instantly see somebody in perfect 20/20 vision, from an astral or psychic perspective, as they were at that very moment as they were at that moment in society. So I have the memory of being outside the simulation. Things are a lot different. There's no limitations to your consciousness outside the simulation. But in the simulation, of course, you have that. Then you have the wiping your memory between lifetimes, so that you don't know who you were, and you don't have any. And for those of you who can get some access to that, you don't have complete access to it. And there's many, many lifetimes that you can't access. You're just getting little bits and pieces. Somebody's in control there. So you're basically in a situation where the only thing that you can do to fix anything is to be a better person and to work with others, collectively, to make a better society. But overall, you're still subject to this control system. So that's the point where I'm saying, okay, something's got to be done about this, and we need to recognize it for what it is.